Hello, this is the chapter reading for Romancing the Tropics by L.M. Mountford. Book 1, Tequila Sunset. Chapter 1. Oh, bugger it, David Street cursed, using his laptop's touchpad to highlight the paragraph he'd just written, and then deleting it with a tap of the key, collapsing back into his desk chair. He couldn't believe it. After working on it all morning, he was actually 2 paragraphs behind where he'd started. He glowered at the screen, the cursor mocking his ineptitude with its constant blinking on the blank Word document. A lot was made of the blank page. It was often said to taunt writers, to intimidate them with the immense space to fill. He never saw it that way, however. To him, the page wasn't a weight tugging him down. It was a challenge to overcome, fresh clay to be molded however he saw fit. No. The page wasn't the problem. It was the pressure, the drive to outdo himself, to make this chapter better than the last, for the book to be new and exciting in a world where the well of creativity had run dry. And time was running out. His agent had been on the phone only that morning to tell him the publishers were getting impatient, that he had missed his deadline, and they wanted to see something by the end of the week, or they would be insisting on the return of his advance. Bloody ingrates, he scoffed, leaning so far back in his chair until he was in real danger of falling on his ass. You make them millions one day and they're kissing your ass, but one little bit of block the next and it's hasta la vista, baby. He emphasized the Schwarzenegger impression by shooting a finger pistol at the ceiling before a scream, then a splash, had him on his feet and looking out the office's window. Below, his daughter Stacy lay out on one of 2 inflatable beds drifting along the surface of the villa's large pool, sunning herself, while her friend Cassandra swam lengths. The girls spent most of the week like that, enjoying the hot summer days and the awe-inspiring views over the Bay of Gibraltar. David had taken a moment to enjoy them too, though his view had been one quite different. His gaze followed the figure in the water, his eyes locking onto the sheer ivory white bikini as she power-stroked through the crystal blue water, from one edge to the other. Without stopping, she dived under, rolled, and kicked away from the wall to repeat the lap. She did this 5 times before swerving and swimming towards the edge closest to the villa where they'd left their towels. It was a scene straight out of David's own dirty little movie. Time almost seemed to hold its breath as Cassandra pulled herself up easily out of the water, throwing back her bountiful mane of raven hair. Rivulets sparkled in the sun and cascaded down her long neck, full breasts, and flat belly. Then she was up on her feet and toweling her hair, her head turning up towards the house, finding him. Their eyes met, and David knew instinctively that she knew he had been watching her. He'd been caught. But the idea only sent a hot shiver tingling up his spine as he dragged his eyes away. Feeling a little hot, he decided he needed to take a break, and maybe have a little fun in the sun himself. Chapter 2. This is the life, Stacy sighed, stretched out across her inflatable. Cassandra didn't answer, just led back on her float and kicked gently away from the edge, sending her float drifting lazily back across the surface of the pool. Overhead, the sky was as blue as she had ever seen it. Stretched out below at the base of the western slope of the rock that dominated the eastern side, the slender crescent-shaped town of Gibraltar seemed quiet and sleepy. Beyond that, the still azure waters of the bay stretched out as far as the eye could see, towards the black lines of the distant Spanish coast. It was paradise, their very own little slice of heaven, cut away from the rest of the world as Gibraltar itself was separated from the rest of mainland Europe. So then, why couldn't she bring herself to enjoy it? I'm sorry, Cass, but you're just too boring for me, Nathan's voice answered, ringing through her memory, thick with all the self-assured arrogance she had once found so exciting. Now it made her skin crawl. It shouldn't have mattered. They'd only gone out a couple times. Hell, they hadn't even slept together yet. Not that he hadn't been trying, of course. It shouldn't have mattered to her what he thought. But it did. it mattered. She hated that it did, but it did matter to her. It mattered because she'd always been that girl. The plain Jane that played everything safe with her routine and comfort zones. Unadventurous, unspontaneous, boring. "Hey, Cassie, are you listening?" Stacy asked, loud enough to snap Cassandra out of her daze. "Huh? What? Oh, sorry, Stace." Pushing her sunglasses up into her sleek and tidy blonde bob, Stacy rolled over to fix Cassandra with a look. Concern shadowed her pale blue eyes. "Are you okay?" "What?" Cassandra forced a smile that she knew wouldn't reach her eyes. "Of course I am. Why shouldn't I be?" "How about because you've done nothing but mope since we got here?" She was right, of course. "Geez, girl, I told you the guy was bad news." No, it's just, Stace, do you think I'm boring?" Cassandra blurted out. "What? No, did he tell you that?" Stacy demanded, bolting up so fast the inflatable wobbled dangerously. "Pretty much. He just wanted to make it clear it was definitely me, not him." "How thoughtful," Stacy sneered, then her expression softened as she reached over to touch her friend's shoulder. "Cass, you like what makes you feel comfortable, that's all. There's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you boring, just you. And if that fucker can't accept it, then that's on him. You're a great catch. So what if you're not that adventurous? With a bod like yours, any guy would be drooling to go out with you. You just need to show it off now and then." "What, with my fat ass and belly?" Stacy rolled her eyes. "I still can't believe you made me buy this thing. I wear more in the shower." "What? It looks great on you. You've got all the right curves for a bikini, and your tits look great in it. All you need now is a sexy little skirt to show off your legs, and maybe a..." Cassandra's stomach dropped as her friend's eyes lit up with an all-too-familiar look. Oh no, she wasn't thinking. "I know. Why don't we go across the border and hit the town for a girls' night? Do a little shopping in Puerto Banos, have a few drinks, find a couple of hot Spanish boys. You know what they say, the best way to get over a bad breakup is getting under a hot Ew, no." Cassandra laughed in mock disgust. Why was she not surprised? Shopping, drinks, and sex, Stacy's holy trinity, though not exclusively in that order. Okay. What about just shopping and drinks then? Come on, Cass, it's only an hour away. We can be there and back again before it even gets late. Come on, Cass, you got all those euros for spending money. And it's the off-season, so the sales are on. Just imagine the bargains. Yeah, thanks, but I think I'll pass. My girls and I are staying right here. But you go. Stacy slumped back on her inflatable with a sigh. Nah, it's okay. I don't want to leave you all alone with Dad. Don't be silly. This is your break, too. You go. Have some fun. Your dad barely comes out of his cave anyway, right? It'll be just like I have my own private little getaway. Even as she said it, Cassandra couldn't help a glance back towards the house, her eyes moving towards Mr. Street's office window, disappointed but not surprised to find it empty. However, Stacy was already halfway across the pool to the ledge and didn't bother to rein in her excitement as she called back, "Okay, if you're sure." Then she was up and out and almost skipping across the villa's back porch before vanishing through into the kitchen without so much as a backwards wave. Cassandra watched her go with the smallest of smiles. God bless Stacy. She always knew just what to say. Not. She always had the right of it, but translation got muddled in transit, somewhere between her brain and her mouth. But her heart was in the right place. It was her idea to come out here. No sooner had Cassandra told her flatmate and old childhood friend what had happened with Nathan, she was on the phone to their boss, getting them both some time off. Stacy never left anything to chance and knew Cassandra well enough to know she would likely try weaseling out of what she had planned by simply saying she couldn't get the time off. Only as an afterthought had Stacy then called her dad to ask if they could use his villa in Gibraltar for the week, with an extra helping of the Daddy's Little Princess routine just to make sure. She needn't have bothered. Mr. Street has always been cool like that, even before his divorce. Firm but laid back, and a big strong softy with a softer spot for his daughter and her friends. Or it might have had something to do with the fact he'd already been out here and wouldn't have to worry about his nice villa getting trashed by a pair of boozed-up party girls. Not that he'd have had much to worry about on her account. Stacy might have been the good-time girl, but the boring little introvert that she was, Cassandra rarely ever went out to the party. And she never ever got pissed. "I'm sorry, Cass, but you're just too boring for me." No, inwardly screaming defiance, she rolled off the inflatable and plugged down through the pool's crystal waters. After the warmth of the Mediterranean Sea, the depths raked her like shards of ice as she kicked angrily from the bottom, then rolled and torpedoed from the tiles for the surface, reaching up to grab a breath before breaststroking for the edge. Nathan's words constantly echoed in her ears, taunting her. No, that wasn't who she was. Stacy was right. She was fun and exciting in her own way. She could step out of her comfort zone. She could do the unexpected. She would prove that arrogant son of a bitch wrong. She would... Oh, who the fuck was she kidding? Hauling herself out of the frigid waters, she made straight for the lounger where she'd laid out her towel, lying back and wrapping it around her like a cocoon. It was hopeless. She didn't even have the balls to go out on an impromptu shopping trip with her best friend. How the hell was she ever going to break out of her slump? What could she do to break the cycle? Room for one? Chapter 3. His familiar low rasp sent a hot rush sizzling down her spine and tingling out to her fingertips. Oh God, that voice. Her heart suddenly fluttered like a robin-red breast in a cage, and Cassandra's breath caught in her throat as she twisted around and saw him walking out of the house. David Street, Stacy's dad, a god among mortal men. A tall feast to behold, with long limbs dusted with soft dark hair, and he was dressed in tan shorts, sandals, and a plain white short-sleeved shirt stretched tight over broad musculature. Beneath those thick waves of raven black hair, his face was like a chiseled slab of white marble, hard and brutal with a sharp nose, wide jaw rough with the morning's growth, and full lips that she had so longed to feel pressed against her skin. And his eyes were the stormiest shade of gray she had ever seen, and so intense they seemed to crash over the banks of her own and wash her away. "Oh, hey, Mr. Street." Cassandra forced herself to smile, but couldn't drag her gaze from the vision of him coming to stand over her with a colorful drink in hand. It didn't help that he'd left the top 3 buttons of his shirt open, teasing her with a glimpse of the treasure beneath. "Sure, help yourself." "Oh, if only I could," David mused, drinking in the bounty stretched out before him, before stepping around her lounger and instead settling down on the next. "Thanks. How's the sun?" he asked before sipping his drink. "Hot and bright. Just another beautiful day in paradise," she said, forcing a broad smile and trying to remember she was meant to be on holiday. She was supposed to be enjoying herself, not a bag of nerves, just because her friend's dad was sitting next to her. Sitting next to her while she was dressed in nothing but this damn micro-bikini. Then he chuckled, a deep, warm, warbling rumble that rose up from within his throat to crash over Cassandra as he turned to look at her. "You say that now, but give it a couple more months and you'll be praying for some good old English weather." She could feel his eyes moving over her body, devouring her from head to toe, and the heat of his gaze made her skin flush and tingle. "If you say so." She licked her lips nervously, her mouth suddenly dry. "How's your book coming along?" Realizing he was staring, David quickly dragged his eyes back out across the bay. Past the menagerie of brightly colored sail ships, an immense cargo tanker was cutting through the dark turquoise waters toward the Spanish port. He focused on it, trying to ignore the stirring between his legs. It didn't help. "Oh, it's coming along, about as well as British Rail. I've got the nucleus of a plot, but it's missing something. I don't know, it's there, right in front of me, but I just can't see through the block." "The dreaded block, huh? Is there anything I can do?" Oh, he could think of a few ways. Every author had their ways for dealing with writer's block. It was just an unpleasant fact of life in his trade, like taxes, the government, or Amazon's ever-shifting policies. Making a big deal about them wasn't going to make any difference, just had to be practical and deal with it. Sex had always been a great help for him when trying to get over the wall. Fuck, how long it had been since he'd last gotten laid? 3 months? 4 at least. Not since his divorce. Too long. Much too long if just looking at Cassandra and that sexy little thing was getting him hard. He'd need to do something about that once the girls had gone home. But first, he needed to make it through the next few days without making a fool of himself. Thank you.